Okay, it's recording. All right, so, but again, one last time, I've started at the templates, a new file in inches, and if I'm not unsure about that, I can go to Tools, Options, right? Here's all the options and settings in Rhino. I can go to Units and make sure they're set to inches. All right, now, let's get my grid shell geometries. Let's see, surface shell classifications, revised 2023. Here we are. Get my perspective mode here. That doesn't look so terrible. And one of the things I can do is I can move this around until I get just the right moment. Why not, right? Okay. Once I have this portion of the surface, it's in green highlighted, right, that patch. Everybody should be around the same size if you do this. So I'm just going to bake this in. I'm going to bake it on default layer. Why not? Sure. Now I can close this out. Do I want to save changes? No, not really. And it's still not showing up in wireframe. That's super. All right. That's going to make this so much more difficult. Because what I want to do is show you lines and curves. But nonetheless, let's see here. Now what? Ribs, right? I can close Grasshopper. To generate the structure, I'm going to use that Rhino script because it's already sort of done for me. Hello, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to just note something really quickly on my layers box, right? We just have the standard defaults, layer 1, layer 2, layer 5. But it's going to change once I run the script, right? The script actually is going to create new layers and put certain things on certain layers for me. There'll be a cut layer, there'll be a score layer, there'll be a U strips layer, a V strips layer, right? And then we'll take a look at that really carefully here, all right? So let's run the Rhino script. To do that, the easiest way, I can run a Rhino script or a Python script, VB or Python. Let's see, I'll do this. I'll bring up the editor. Okay. It has a tendency to remember the last script I opened up until I close it. But a reminder, this is just the RVB file that I posted, so you just have to download that and open it on here. Or, go to File, Open, and you can, script editor runs scripts. So that's a script file, which is basically a text file. You open it up in the text editor, right? File, Open. And I used to have a bunch of these, not anymore, not so much now that we use Grasshopper. And you'll see here, right, there's a bunch of comments and there's a bunch of stuff and there's a bunch of functions down here that are called later. So anyway, I'm just going to hit the play button, run that script. We could actually make our own toolbar, like a button on the toolbar to run that script if you really want to. I'm just going to run it through the script editor. But just like anything in Rhino or any software, you click on a button, it's going to ask you for ingredients and parameters. Right? So the first thing, select the surface to populate with tiles. There we are. Number of tiles. I'll go with 10, 10. Enter a height for the strip, the depth, right, the sort of structural depth, 0.75. I know that's inches because 0.75 units would be inches. And then the distance between unrolled strips, I'm just going to pick something large like 20, and then 40, and then enter the material thickness, and I'll do 0.03 or something like that. All right. You guys all know what this looks like now. And you'll have to trust me on this, but there are cut and score sort of ribs down here. You just can't see them because Rhino is stupid for me for some silly reason.
I think it would be Fusion.
No, it's a graphics card talking from my MacBook Pro to the parallels to Rhino. It's something. So anyway, but what I really want to look at is this three-dimensional thing, right? You guys have all the laser cut stuff ready, right? And it should be the exact same scale as this. And you've already laid them out in sheets. I would like for you to lay them out in the catalog, right? And another grid that's sort of on this poster along with this thing. So it's almost as if, like, here's the sort of thing, here's the surface, and then here's the structure, and then here's the units, the cells, the shading components, right? It's an exploded axon. And then maybe down the bottom or along the side or something, you have basically the sort of catalog of components. And they're labeled over here, and they're labeled up here, right? So you can start to understand which goes to which is really important. Now, notice the layers box, right? Now I have got V strips, U strips, cut and score. The cut and score stuff is all the stuff laid out on the XY plane, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off. But the U strips and the V strips, right? Those are the three-dimensional waffle that's made here for the model, right? And if I select one of those and I go to the properties, right, next to layers, if I select one of these, look at that. It's named each of these. So this one's named V0, right? The first ribbon V, right? And that will correspond to whatever, strip has that V0 label, V1, V2, right? All the way to V9. It's the same thing with U. So let's see. That's U0 right there. So this would be, what, U10? Yeah, U10. Right? This would be V10, potentially. If I select the right thing. Yeah, V10. All right. I'm going to select all this stuff, and I'm going to move it out of the way, right? One of the things I didn't do early on was move it out of that XY plane, right? The quadrants, positive X, positive Y, right? Here's X, here's Y. Rhino has a tendency to place everything at the 0, 0, 0 point in that positive quadrant, XY quadrant, in the Cartesian coordinate plane, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this stuff out of the way so that as I start to unroll things out in that positive quadrant, positive X, positive Y quadrants, this stuff isn't in the way as well, okay? All right, so this was 10 by 10. I want to remember that, right? All right, let's go to Grasshopper. Let me open this up. Let's see, a recent file. Unrolled shading components, shells. Let's see, fabrication layout example. Right, so here's this one. In this one, actually, oops, here we are. Needs, again, that starting point. The ingredient is the grid shell surface, right? So set one surface, just like you guys have done. Surface, there we are. Okay. Now it's dividing this thing 15 by 15, which of course is going to be a mistake. I have 10 by 10 sort of cells with this structure, right? So I want to make sure that this matches that. So if I've already picked 10 by 10, then I'm going to come back here and make this 10 by 10. Now these things should actually line up with, I'll turn this off and look, should actually line up with those ribs here. And in fact, they do. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Pure alignment awesomeness. All right, so there we are, right? This is like half a pyramid sort of projecting out over the cell. So it's, again, this is just the example I told you you couldn't do. And of course, we know for laser cutting, here's what we want. We want the outside edges and then any interior fold edges that we want to sort of inscribe, right? Score versus 3 cuts and things like that. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that these three-dimensional versions are baked into my model. And not only that, but I'm going to make. Oh, that's annoying. Is that better? It's like a loose connection, maybe in this adapter. I should have pulled out the other adapter. Because of course I have more than one adapter. All right, so. Right, where was I? Oh, I'll make a layer. I'll make a specific layer for this. So I'll say new layer, and I'll call this shading components. Yep. And go through here. Let's see. Here's where they're joined together. Oh, yeah, look at that. I highlight this in green. I can see what's highlighted in green in Rhino. I know it's 10 by 10, so I should have 100 components. And look at that. I have 100 open poly surfaces, right? This is an open poly surface, 2 triangles, 2 triangles, 2 triangles, etc. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bake this into shading components layer and hit OK. Now I can turn off Grasshopper. And everything's in Rhino. All right. Maybe I'll change the, this isn't wireframe, is it? So it's going to have a hard time doing that. Let's see what it does with rendered mode. Not too bad. Okay. Now what's interesting here is that render mode must be rendering curves and edges in my settings, right? So we'll look at that in a minute. But here's what I have. You can see I have some surfaces over here and there and everywhere. Let's see. Oh, it's because the U strips and V strips are still on. No, that shouldn't be the case. Cut and score should all be. That's weird. I must have just accidentally moved this thing around, which is easy to do when you can't see anything. So I'll go ahead and turn those off. At this point, right, if I'm differentiating this from the laser cut stuff, I might make a copy of it off and get rid of some of that curve information, right? At a certain point, like you have so much information in a file, you're like, maybe I just make separate files, you know what I mean? Right, so anyway, what I want to do is cell curves. I'm just going to select all curves. And I'm just going to make sure that those are on the cut layer. Just change them to a different layer that's already turned off in that way. There we are. Okay, because what I really want to focus on is this right here. And realizing that I have everything on its own layer. So I have the default layer with my actual just sort of original surface, the geometry of this grid shell. And then I have all the structure I've added to that. And I have all of the sort of shading skin cells I've added to that, right? Okay. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. And one is I'm going to go to front view and I'm going to change this, I guess, to rendered. Oy, there it is. All right. Now, if I keep things on different layers, it's really easy to select things by layer, right? I mean, most of you probably know this, but just in case, right? What I can do is I can say, all right, let's take the U strips and V strips. Let's select the V strips and say select all the objects on that layer. Done, right? And now when I move them, I can be very particular about moving them a certain distance, right? So let's say I want to move them up 20 inches. No, maybe less than that. Let me say 10 inches. Let's try 10. And I'm using my side viewport to move them in Z. It's really easy, right? Okay. I do the same thing then for the U strips. Select objects. Move. Oh, I didn't unselect the other ones, so here, let me just unselect. It's, ay. Select objects. Move. Maybe I'll go with 15. And so what I'm doing is I'm slowly making some sort of exploded drawing here. Now, before I did this, I should probably keep it all together. Maybe make a copy off to the side and explode that, right? So this is where, you know, some of these things come in handy, like thinking a couple steps ahead. Let me just copy this over here. Copy. Is it really making a copy? Yeah, I guess it did. Ugh, this is so annoying. All right, anyway. And so let's see. We have the shading components. I'll go ahead and select those objects. Oh, okay. Let me hide this. It's there, but it won't be there. Let's see, select objects. Gosh. And I'll just move them up a certain amount, right? Oh, come on. There we are. What's it doing? Start off with such a good day. It's still a good day, but come on. All right, so let's see, U strips, V strips, right, let's see. Let's try this one more time. Select objects, we'll move these. U strips, we can move those. Now, again, when it comes to a good drawing, I want to be very particular about things, right? So there's a couple of things we need to think about. One, the overall format of this thing. Are we going to have shadows and shadings? We just want curves? We want a mixture of both, right? Two, do I have the spacing right? Can I begin to see all the different pieces and points of them in space? Three, everything's paper thin. It doesn't really look like it's made out of something material, right? So we can offset things to get some thickness, right? All right, so without worrying too much about the first two, let's give some things some thickness, shall we? Let me go back to my 4 views. And let's do offset surface. Right? Offset surf. Right? Really simple way to offset something, give it some thickness. And let's do the V-strips first. Why not? Select objects on the V-strips layer. Press enter when done. Select the object to flip direction. I just want to make sure that these things are, it's really hard to see on my screen, obviously, but the distance and the direction and the solid yes, right? I'm just going through these parameters, right? It's going to ask me about all of these things. Rather than using a slide bar, I just have to click distance and say 0.03, right? Because that's our, we said that's our material thickness. Yeah. 0.03. Solid yes, and I'm going to hit OK. I'm just going to go through and do all of those really quickly. Let's take a look at what do we have now. Oh yeah, a little bit of thickness there, right? 0.03. Looks like chipboard now. Well, except it's gray instead of like brown, right? Yeah. All right, let's do the same right here. Offset surf. Let's do, did I just do the U strips or did I just do the V strips? It was the V strips. All right, so select objects. Distance 0.03, solid yes, enter. Right. Oh yeah, look at that thickness. All right, now, same with these, right? Offset, surf. Select all of these. Distance 0.03, yeah, somewhere around there. Solid yes, sure, let's try it. It'll take a little while, but here we go. Looks like it's all done. It was pretty methodical. Oh, it's still thinking. No, it's not. There we go. Yeah. Now these all have thickness to them. Yeah. All right. So now it looks right. Looks good for a drawing, doesn't it? Let's see. Maybe I'll just blow up my perspective view. And instead of leaving it as perspective, I'm going to turn it to isometric. That doesn't look like too bad of a view, vantage point to sort of see the surface. The low point's closer to me, the high point's further away. So I'm not like blocking part of my surface with the front part of my surface. I can see most of the units and things like that there. I can see my ribs. Now the ribs were labeled, right? And they're labeled here also in the model. So that's V10, this is V0, right? So I know exactly where these things are supposed to go. The components, not so much, right? Yeah. All right, so this is where I'm going to go back into Grasshopper and show you guys a few things and how you can check which is which. But from here, we're really close to making basically, you know, I would probably turn rendering settings. I'd probably turn off the ground plane. I'd probably go in here into options to my views, to my display modes like we did earlier. Go to rendered and, you know, turn on or off anything that I want. You know, I maybe show wires, iso curves, show edges. I can give things line weights, right? So if I look at surfaces, I can say edge color, you know, give it an edge thickness and things like that. Let's try that. Let's see. Use single color for all edges. We'll make it black. Use edge thickness. Let's say 1. Oops, not 12. That seems a bit extreme. Same thing here. Use separate settings. Edge thickness for naked edges, let's bump that up to 2. Surface ISO curves, I'll hit OK. Now it's not showing up on mine, unfortunately, just because my system is being stupid right now. But you can begin to play around with this, and I encourage you to. If you have any questions about it, just come see me. Set up a time to meet, or just knock on my door in my office, or peek in. Some of you guys do that, so it's perfectly fine. That's what I'm here for. Shall we talk about figuring out which cell is which? I think that seems really important. We might have to do it more than once, so I want to do it now, and I can show you again if we need to, okay? So that's my Axon view, but let's go back to Grasshopper and let's take a look at what we have here, okay? When I open up in Grasshopper, I have a bunch of red cells, right? Over here, 3-dimensional versions, and then I have their analog, the sort of, not the analog, but the unfolded versions out here, right? So the question is, which corner does that one go to, right? In which direction does this row go? Is that a row or a column, right? It's not a trivial thing to sort of understand. So let's look at how we can understand that really clearly in Grasshopper. Before you even bake anything in, what we can do, if you'll remember, right here, we have a list. I have a list of 100 shape components, right? Let's just say I want to find the first item in that list and the second item on the list, so I can see where that first item would be in the grid, and then which way is the row going, which ways the columns are going, right? So let's take a look at this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say set, and I have lots of things I can do with lists. Remember back to week 1, right? We made lists of let's see, numbers. We could reverse lists. When we made trusses, we shifted the list to start to connect and make all kinds of interesting diagonal bracing and webbing, right? So I can say, let's just find the first or one item in the list, right? It says in, list item, right? What that lets us do is that lets us pull one particular item from each list that we plug in here. So we say, what's the list that we're going to look at? And then which item? And you know how you number the items? You know, like when you make a set of bullet points in Word, like an outline, it starts with A and then B and C and 1, 2, 3, and the little sub things, right? Remember, all of our lists in Grasshopper are numbered as well. Except instead of starting with 1, they start with 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Right? All right, so you can see by default the index is set to 0. That's the first item in this list. So let's double check that. Once I do that, in this widget only has the first item in that list. And you can see I highlight it here, and I can see what it's highlighted in green. Right, so it's actually, that first item is over here. Right? And I can do the exact same thing with the same type of widget. I'll make a copy of that over here with this, right? So now I can see that this one is actually this one over here, right? Now I look at that and go, okay, now as I'm starting to make this thing, I know exactly where 0, 0 is, or 1, 1, or whatever that label is, right? Now, let's change that number, right? That's the first item in the list. Let's change the number to 1 to get the second item in the list. And the same thing here. Aha. So actually it steps in columns in my top view in the laid out version, but it's more like rows in my 3-dimensional version, right? So now I know that, let's take a look at this. When I make my drawing, this one is 2, 1, right? This first one was 1, 1. This one's 2, 1. And so now I know that 2, 1 is actually this over here. I can label as such. I could label this one 1, 1. This one will be 10 or 9, 1. This one over here will be 9, 9. And this one over here will be 1, 9. I can tell you that already, right? or sorry, 110. 10, 10, 10, 1, 110. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm recording this, so you can always go back and watch it, right? If you're confused at all, just let me know. Sooner rather than later. Right? Sooner rather than later. Yeah, help me help you, right? The sooner you get help, we get you over a hump, right? The quicker you're on your way to getting to that finish line, right? Okay. So I could begin to test this out. What I'll do is instead of changing each time with a right click and entering in a value, I'll make a number slider constrained to integers that starts at 0 and ends at 100 or something like that, just something ridiculously large. And I'll plug it in for both. All right, then I'll select these and we can sort of look at these things as we go. Let's see, let's go into top view. Top view was kind of nice, right? And now we can sort of see as I step this up, the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, all the way to number 9, the 10th one, and then it starts again on the next row, in the next column, okay? When you see it in top view, it goes, oh, so there's not this relationship doesn't actually show up here, it's a different orientation. Columns are rows, and the actual starting point is different. All right, so that's, I think, what some of you are missing and trying to understand which component. You had the components, you had them labeled, but you didn't know which corner to actually start with and which direction rows versus columns were, right? This will help you figure that out. And look at it here, start to label out your drawing, and then the drawing will actually help you. You can just PDF that bad boy, have your laptop out, instead of watching Netflix on your laptop, you'll have that up on your laptop while you're assembling this thing, right? Hulu, Amazon, Disney Plus. Anybody got Disney Plus? Apple TV, whatever. Peacock. All right. YouTube, whatever YouTube's is. All right. Okay. So that's one way you can begin to sort of make sense of this. Right? And again, I'll upload this to YouTube and embed it into Canvas. Okay.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about drawing the last few minutes we have. Right? You guys like drawing? You guys like making drawings? I'm seeing no, I picked a weird major, not like drawings. It's what we do. All right. What's good? Name some things, good qualities that good drawings have.
A finished product.
Yeah, maybe. Not necessarily, though. I've seen lots of unfinished drawings.
Presenting ideas quickly.
What's that?
Presenting ideas quickly.
Okay, you get the idea quickly. It's got to be legible, right? Readable, clear, clean. What else?
Hierarchy.
Visual hierarchy, emphasis, right, where your eye hits. What else?
Visualization.
You can think simpler. Think simpler.
Visualization.
Think simpler.
Pretty.
There's a scale to this and the amount of density on the screen, right? It should be clean. Line weights, right? You need to adjust line weights and make sure. Look, all of this stuff, right? You didn't learn all this stuff for no reason. You're supposed to continue to use it throughout, right? So, I don't know, how many of you have like Michael Grancy or somebody like that in his first or second year, right?
Yeah.
He probably talked a little bit about line weights. I hope. Right? And there's a reason for that, because in third year, you're expected to fucking change the line weights around and start to give this thing emphasis, visual emphasis, and hierarchy, right? Certain things need to pop. Yeah, exactly, right? And there's a primary information, tertiary information, secondary information, etc., right? Beginning to understand that set rules for yourself is really important, particularly when you have a drawing with hundreds, if not even thousands of lines, right? These will actually look like kind of fairly basic drawings to me. Like, usually I see a drawing, I go, ask anybody that had me in second year studio. I'll see a drawing and go, that's great. Now add 800 more lines or multiply it by 10. Right? Don't I? Between me and Alberto and Samantha and Phil and, right? JR? Yeah. All right? So here it's about clarity. Right? Now, when it comes to, let's say, an exploded axon, look at some good examples. There's more than one way to do that. Let me just close this really quickly. But let's say this is my exploded axon and I get it to a good size, right? I mean, I would want line work on here, right? Maybe I draw a couple of guidelines. I can bring this into Illustrator, and start to draw little guidelines. Turn those to really light gray. They're very subtle. Maybe put a little dash dot sort of pattern in them or whatever, right? Like you can begin to sort of use. Here's what I don't want. I don't want color. Color is a crutch for you guys at the moment.
Oh, color is so cool.
No. Do it with just the lines.
Yeah.
It's harder, and therefore worth doing, right? Like if all your ingredients are, I can change the line weight, I can change the line type, and I can change the line color within grayscale, right? It's much more disciplined, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So do that. Do that. Now, when it comes to like a poster format, there's a prescription I prescribed a few things, right? Like the size. I think I said 12 by 24. Was it 24 by 48?
No.
It was basically a 2-to-1 aspect ratio vertical. That's supposed to give you enough room for this,
Yeah.
plus component catalog, plus maybe your name and things like that. Now, how many of you look at this and say, here's another thing I've noticed with your guys' drawings. Not just yours, but everybody's here, it seems like. Let me start to add some text here. Let's get a better font. Arial. Oops.
Bless you.
You can't see that.
Bless you.
Can you see that? I think that text is too big. It's dwarfing each cell, isn't it? Right? Like trying to figure out font sizes, right? Typeface is the exact same way. There should be a visual hierarchy. What labels do you see first? Is it the thing at the bottom saying generative grid shell? Is it your name? Is it AAD367? Probably not, right? That's kind of weird. But think about this, right? How do you begin to attack these things? If I brought these things into, maybe I'll have something quickly on Monday to show you guys in Illustrator, refresh your memory with some Illustrator, right? That's where I recommend starting to add text. You can add line work if you want. I can always do a make 2D of this rather than trying to render out the curves and edges. In which case then I have to overlay that with the rendering. And I can start to manipulate language from there, right? So again, I'll try to restart this and go through at the very beginning, maybe before class starts, I'll rerun the parallels. See a little box restart because it's sort of not working every time I do it like a week later, it's not working again. Which is stupid, whatever. And good craftsmen, everyone just crappy tools. Anyway, yeah, so this is the gist, right? How do you make a nice exploded axon of this stuff? And make it look good, right? Like, I would say, like, if I don't see any line work, then it's not good yet. Like, I mean, I don't want just a rendering of like a, just a shaded model view. I don't mind the tone along with the line work, right? If you want. But at the same time, I'd say, you can either do make 2D and then manually start to manipulate line weights in Illustrator, or you can go to the display viewport thing and get into, like, similarly what we did in Production 1. Make your own sort of viewport mode, combination of the technical with the, and rendered mode or Arctic mode or whatever you like, where you get tone and soft shadows, but you also get line work. You can set things like the silhouette lines, line weights versus the edge line weights. Okay, makes sense? Yeah. All right, good. That's good. If you have some sort of draft by Monday, I'm happy to look at your draft and give you a few suggestions and a few things to clean up before you submit the final thing on Wednesday. I'm always happy for that. let's see how you guys do. But I don't want to push it too much further than November 15th. Because if that happens, then we get closer to your full studio deadline, right? Yeah. When's your full studio deadlines? Third year. Fourth year, I think we're, at least my studio, we're doing December 1st.
December 8th.
The third year's going to do the last day of the review week. That's going to go. I bet you, how many do you think the third year is the second? Well, I guess you guys go in the evening. So the second year's right. What a pain in the ass. Whatever. I hopefully we avoid all this controversy by just going to December 1st, right? Mariana? Yeah. All right. So, because I want to take up all the walls. I want all the walls, and at least for that afternoon, and then I want to have a bunch of reviews. All right. Is this clear enough, at least, for how to start getting going? From there, it's about formatting the drawing. And we can talk more with more nuance and more details on Monday. Now, in parallel with this, I expect you to continue going, putting together your final laser cut prototype. Do the best you can. Make the best grid shell you possibly can. But again, work with the precision of the digital technologies, right? The idea is to go from the digital information, design information, to the digital fabrication tool like the laser cutter, right? And if you've solved everything, putting it together is actually the least frustrating part. We'll see. Good luck. Have nice weekends. Oh, long weekend. Yay! Wow! I love me a long weekend.
So I have a laser cutting appointment for Monday,
Okay.
and I was wondering, are you going to be available anytime tomorrow to do it like an appointment?
Just email me, I guess, and we can try to find something. Or
Okay, because I'll be available tomorrow if that's possible.
let's see. I take the dog to the groomer in the morning time.
Okay. I have like a morning class from like 8:30. No, I think 8:30 to 9:45. So anytime after.
I
that's
might
fine.
not be here, but we could always do something over Zoom. You gotta email me though, so I can get on my calendar.
Okay.
My calendar is a minefield at the moment.
Okay, so Zoom tomorrow would be alright if I can email you.
Email me so we can get it time synced up. Okay.
Okay, do you want me to tell you what time, or can you?
Over email, let's work it out because I don't have my calendar up, and it would be flashed on the screen right now if I open it up. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.